Right now on Tech Radio, Intel crisis, Tesla Freefall, and Google's secret plan.
Hi, I'm Artemis. I am a computer-generated AI voice, and you're listening to Tech Radio.
Every week online and on air with RT Radio, we bring you the very latest in tech from Ireland and across the world. This is episode 1066, looking at the 7 biggest stories of the week, including Europe dishing out big fines to Facebook and Apple, a bad week for Tesla's financials, and a court in the US rules in favour of consumers. Kind of. Plus, we discover how tech is helping our physical and mental health with our guest Stephen Costello, CEO and co-founder of Spectrum.life.
From techcentral.ie, this is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
I'm Dusty. Joining me as always, our editor-in-chief with the finger on the pulse of everything that's happening in tech. It's Niall Kitson. Niall, a big story in Ireland this week, starting off with Intel. The rumour is that 20% of the workforce is going to be cut. Is this globally or is this in Ireland?
That's globally. And
okay.
Intel employs nearly 109,000 people around the world. Absolutely massive organisation. They've been in Ireland since 1989 and they employ 5,000 people, most famous in Ireland for their manufacturing facility out in Leixlip. And they recently upgraded it to, there's a new part of the facility called Fab 24, which is all about chip manufacturing. That's basically their business over here. It is expected, now Intel have denied this so far. They, in an official statement, they said this was, basically rumor and speculation. They're not talking about this. So our source on this is a report from Bloomberg, which has been echoed around the internet and around the press. And apparently 20% of the workforce is going to go as part of Intel's big reorganization. Now, the reasons behind this are, well, I don't want to say many and varied because they're not really. If you go back to the end of 2023, I think it was, Intel parted company with Pat Gelsinger. The end of 24. And he was a lifer with Intel. I mean, he started with the company, I think, in 79. And he came in as an engineer. And his idea for what Intel should be doing is that they can design and manufacture their own chips. That's fine. That's what people expect them to do. But they should also they should also manufacture other people's chips as well. So he took what he looked at Intel as a foundry, that we've got all this specialized equipment. We can do this stuff ourselves. We don't have to be reliant on Taiwan Semiconductor Company or TSMC, who build an awful lot of chips for an awful lot of people. We don't have to, and we shouldn't have to rely on, the Far East to look after our manufacturing when we can do it ourselves. And potentially we can do things for other people too. And when you look at where Intel is in the market at the moment, that's a pretty good idea, because Intel's still doing really, really well in PCs. You buy a PC, the chances are it's an Intel chip in there. However, the likes of AMD have caught up big time. My laptop is an AMD laptop and it's pretty darn good. And of course, when you're looking at the GPU space, it's all about NVIDIA. Also, it's all about NVIDIA when it comes to AI. And this really is where Intel seems to have been left behind in sort of I'm not going to say a rush to do something, but in looking to execute this strategy, which was quite forward-looking, but didn't seem to take away an awful lot of the organizational structure. It seemed to be about making the best of what they have and leaning into what they can do for other people. Now, Gelsinger left and the new CEO is Lip-Bu Tan, who came in, he was previously with Intel, and he came back in March of this year and he said, look, Okay, Intel is really good at manufacturing. This is what we're going to lean into: manufacturing and engineering. This is the company Intel is. And he set about, I'm going to say, streamlining the management, where previously you had some areas didn't have a chief technology officer. Others had a fairly convoluted reporting system. Now, I think there's multiple chief technology officers now, all looking at different areas, but they report to the CEO directly. So it's very much a boots on the ground kind of operation. So when you look at the kind of jobs Intel might be getting rid of, because we've been looking at things from the perspective of 20% potentially of Intel's workforce is going to go. Does that mean 20% distributed evenly across the organization? Or does that mean 20% everywhere that it's operating in? Because based on what we're hearing at the moment, and based on, the view of this perspective of new Intel, it could be the likes of salespeople and middle managers getting the brunt of the cuts. So if you look at people involved in manufacturing and design, which is what we're particularly focused on in Ireland, we mightn't see that level of cut at all. In fact, we mightn't see much in the way of job losses in Ireland if what we're good at is the things Intel actually want to lean into and stay being really good at.
That's an excellent explanation, and a very measured explanation of what is going on and how it relates to Ireland. Has Intel in Ireland actually made a statement, or what are they saying?
No, they're staying quiet. As we talk, we're talking about this on a Thursday. Their Q1 results are due out today. The conversation may be very different tomorrow. So, this is what we're working on at the moment. Intel are staying stum. They're saying, this is pure speculation at this point. I got a statement from government yesterday just saying we're going to continue to engage with Intel. Very non-committal stuff altogether.
I think it's a very worrying time for anybody who's working for organizations like that in Ireland, particularly the big American companies, Apple I'm thinking of as well, because who knows what this whole thing with the American administration and wanting manufacturing to come back into continental United States. It could affect us, it could not. My own opinion is that in the grand scheme of things, no, it's not going to affect Ireland, because all of these brands are global brands and they do need a foothold in Europe one way or the other. So I think they will absolutely maintain their presence, and I think they will absolutely maintain their presence the way it is at the moment. Anyway, we shall wait and see and keep fingers crossed for everybody in Intel. Where are they? Over West Dublin? Leixlip, that's it. Yes, and there's one in Shannon as well, so we better not forget that. Moving on, other stories this week. Apple and Meta, huge fines down from the EU. If I'm not mistaken, the Meta fine is in direct conflict with what the Irish Data Protection Commission was said. It was the payer okay thing. Do you remember they said, okay, we'll use your data, click okay, or else you can pay and you may have to make the decision now. And I remember at the time, because we only mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, the Irish Data Protection Commissioner said, no, they're kind of within their rights to do that. And the EU have come back with, oh, no, they're not. And attached a real big number to it. Tell me everything.
Yeah, spare a thought for Apple and Meta. They've got it tough over in Europe, what with our rules and regulations and pushing the consumer first. So two big cases that we have talked about off and on the show for quite a while. So let's talk about Facebook first. Now, this is to do with the Digital Markets Act, which, as we know, is all about making sure there are no gatekeeper platforms out there, to make sure that any black boxes are open, that if there's now there's 6 platforms that were identified by the EU, Microsoft, TikTok, Apple, Meta, I can't remember the other 2 offhand, but the big players. And it was decided that, look, for these guys, you've got to throw open your systems and let other people play within them. Google, of course, in there as well. And this will relate to something that we talk about later. And Meta, as you say, it was the pay or okay sort of model that was introduced. Ireland said, yep, looks cool to us. The EU said, no, I think you'll find it is not cool. And it's certainly not cool the way that Facebook gave the choice to people in terms of detail and the kind of service they might expect thereafter. It was very much a black and white. Hey, you want to keep using the service? Right. It's going to cost you this much. And if you keep using the service, we're assuming you're giving us stuff anyway. Europe said, no, you can't make that assumption. And Facebook have been fined €200 million for doing it.
Is that all?
That's all. Now,
you can only say that when it comes to, companies like Facebook and Meta. But anyways, go on.
Well, it's the only thing they understand. Yeah. Now, I'm actually quite intrigued by this because it's the first big smackdown we've seen delivered to do with the Digital Markets Act. I mean, we're going to see a few more efforts. Of course, X is going through a case at the moment. I've managed to name the 6 by accident, but anyway, yeah.
What about Apple?
Apple. Also a problem with the Digital Markets Act. They've been fined €500 million. And again, this is a case that we've back and forthed on for a long time because it was one that I don't want to say it was triggered in the US, but I think the first time we talked about it was the Epic Games case happening in the States, where if you were a Fortnite player and you wanted to buy their virtual currency, you could go to the Fortnite website and the purchase would be valid. Of course, Epic Games said, well, hang on, we want to be able to use our own payment system through the Apple app. To which Apple said, no, you're going to use our payment system. And that's it. And that's pretty much what has happened in Europe. Europe looked at this and said, okay, we've got a big problem. One, okay, your app store might be fine. You're giving developers a deal. It's the only deal they can have, though. And if somebody wants to download an app, yes, okay, it's been verified and, they'll say it's safe or whatever, but maybe, an app hasn't been accepted on the App Store for whatever reason. People have the right to choose. They have the right to choose not to use your payment system. They have the right to choose whether to use a separate App Store, which is something Android users have always had. They've always had a choice of app stores. You can have the Google one, or you can go download access to a different one. And mostly they're populated with the same things, but they've got separate systems behind it. To which the EU has hit Apple with a fine of €500 million. Just let people do things their way and we're not going to have any problems. Now, apparently the EU case with Apple has been closed. They're not going to do any further investigating in it. So I assume that means Apple has said, yeah, okay, fair cop, we'll pay. Because it's not worth continuing the action, seeing as we know pretty much we were in the wrong because the way the Digital Markets Act is framed. Of course, Facebook are stamping their feet and being grouchy and all that sort of stuff on it. Again, they're going to have to eat this fine. Sorry. What's going to be interesting is to see what happens with X, seeing as they are, maybe what they're doing comes under the remit of the Digital Services Act, because the issue that Europe has with them is the lack of content moderation and protection for younger users. So that makes sense on that front. But yeah, first big bites out of big tech for the Digital Markets Act. I saw a really good headline for it. It's not big tech, it's big advertising.
Well, that's very true. Listen, you were talking about X there. I wanted to ask you about Elon Musk, because we all know how personal he is with X. He is now turning the volume down or shutting people up who don't agree with him or criticize him. Is that true?
That's turning the volume down is a very effective and simple way of describing what's gone on. The technical term is shadow banning. It's effectively artificially reducing the amount of engagement somebody gets for their posts, right? So say you've got 1 million followers, you will post something, and on an average day, you will get 200,000 likes or 10,000 likes.
Yeah.
One tweak to the algorithm, and that can go down to maybe 10 or 15 likes or 20 likes. That's how easily X can be manipulated. Now, Elon Musk took some criticism towards the end of last year over his attitude towards visas for highly skilled workers. As we know, X and Tesla and SpaceX require foreign talent in order to work, in order to progress as companies, more so SpaceX, I think it's fair to say. And Musk was coming down very much on the pro side of the visa argument. There were an awful lot of right-wing influencers. I'll put top of the list Laura Loomer, who has the ear of Donald Trump, we will say, who said, the following is rubbish. We should be giving these jobs to American people, etc., etc. Mysteriously, Miss Loomer's engagement dropped precipitously. Similarly, other people on the right who had argued against work visas also saw their engagement drop precipitously. So the argument has been made out there, Mr. Free Speech Absolutism does not like being pushed back on, especially by people that he would hope would share his politics, share his worldview, would, massage his ego where appropriate. True. So does not like pushback.
Look at his best buddy at the moment, Trump. Kind of when he was kicked off Facebook and X 4 years ago, he went and started his own social media network, and to this day, that's the one that he uses. He hasn't jumped back on Facebook that I can see, or X that I can see. Everything is Truth Social. I wonder if there's anybody else on that social network other than him, because it's the only one I ever see.
I would wager the numbers of users on that network.
I don't think that
massaged. We'll put it that way.
Anyway, listen, let's go back to Elonia. Aside from X, things are, now when I say are not good at Tesla, it's shocking how bad things are at Tesla. How bad is it?
Yeah, well, I tell you, those who bought in the dip a couple of weeks ago made a bad choice. The dip is today. The tip was yesterday. Tesla released their Q1 revenue report, their Q1 report for the year. Net profits are down 71% on the same time last year. Tesla's net income was 480 million versus 2.5 billion last year.
Wow.
Yeah, and 2.13 billion just the previous quarter. So there's a couple of things affecting this. An awful lot of them cultural. Like, bear in mind, and marketers do this all the time. They talk about personas. Who is your ideal customer, right? Who is Tesla's ideal customer? They've got a lot of disposable income. They're college educated. They're, concerned about the environment. And possibly they're a bit gadgety as well. They're first movers, they're evangelists, they've got money, they've been educated, they're concerned about the environment. That's who Tesla's core, customer base has been for years. Now you had Elon Musk adopt some fairly hardline right-wing politics. We now know about his natalist worldview, which we won't get into. You can look that up in your own time. And his involvement with the Department of Government Efficiency, which isn't an actual government department. It's basically Elon Musk going in and slashing the size of government, presumably so he can keep his federal contracts, so they will pay for themselves, and also pay for a bit of a tax cut for himself. while he's at it. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, that they have discovered very little in the way of waste, fraud and abuse. If somebody goes into government and says, I'm going to find waste, fraud and abuse, you expect that, it's a massive problem that government hasn't been able to solve for itself. Turns out, not a massive problem. American government is huge, but actually not terribly run compared with, what you might have thought.
It's certainly nothing, because you get the impression that people are just sitting around, having extended lunches and then doing nothing for the afternoon and playing solitaire on the computers all day and that kind of stuff. That's not actually happening.
Not actually happening. So unfortunately, Doge has been associated with thousands of people losing their jobs at the behest of the world's richest man. So there was, I can't remember who ran this. It might have been CNN. It was sort of a unfavorability poll. 31% of Americans have a favorable view of Elon Musk. I mean, the guy is not popular. He is not popular at all. And if you look at the sales of of Tesla products, I mean, we talked about the ideal customer. These are exactly the people that are cranky with Elon Musk at the moment. They are not, they quite like the idea of a federal government. They don't like seeing it downsized. And they don't like his politics. Musk has turned the brand toxic. So much of Tesla's public face is wrapped up in Elon Musk. People like Musk, Tesla does well. People don't like Musk, Tesla does not do well. Now, there's also a product issue with Tesla. The Cybertruck has been a total bust. It has not sold well. We talked about this last week even. We also know that the Tesla Model Y, a very well-regarded roadster, however, has not been properly updated since 2020. And of course, we know Tesla vehicles are notorious for being recalled. So you're looking perplexed, Dusty, when I say the Model Y hasn't been properly updated since 2020.
But you see, that's the thing, as you say, with tech. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, if you're into something, it's like the smartphones and stuff like that. We loved it because every 2 years there would be something huge and new and we'd have to have it and we'd have to upgrade. And it was the same for a time with computers and then laptops when they came out and all that kind of stuff. And cars, I kind of get it. Like they seem to have arrived at a point where it's working well and there's no real huge thing. And what? Pardon me. It wasn't that I was looking perplexed about what you were saying. It's in the back of my head. I was in a taxi during the week, which was a Tesla, a very nice car, right? But what I didn't know about a Tesla car is that you have to have very special tires for it. Okay, and they're about 300 quid a piece, which means 4 tires in the car is 1,200 quid. And this is only for Tesla cars. All right. Tires for regular cars, way cheaper, like hundreds cheaper. Tires for other electric cars, way cheaper. Tesla, 1,200. I was just joking with the driver going, well, now we know why Musk is the richest man in the world, yada, yada, yada.
Total cost of ownership, isn't it?
It is. But listen, speaking of gadgets, I've got a great little story for you, which happened during the week. Speaking of gadgets, it was a half marathon in Beijing. Now, I'm not a sporty person, but the reason that this marathon caught my attention was because they allowed robots to take part in the run.
Okay, so robots mixing in with humans.
Exactly. There were 21 of them in all. Okay. They were humanoid robots. So they had to have, legs and arms and heads and all that kind of stuff, varying in height from 4 feet to 6 feet. And crucially, couldn't have wheels. It actually had to run like a human being to go along with it. Okay. The human winner was 1 hour and 2 minutes. The robot winner of all the robots that took part was 2 hours and 40 minutes. Now, if you look at a human running and then consider a robot running and maybe it's taking twice the time or 2.5 times the time, it's still a phenomenal thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even when you take in the fact that it needed 3 battery changes.
Well, in
it is.
fairness, if I was to try something like that, I probably would as well.
Well, I think, I think the robot would definitely beat me. There's no doubt. But I just thought, what an amazing, because we've seen some great things from Boston Dynamics and stuff like that with their dogs and stuff like that. And the videos that they have on YouTube of robots dancing and stuff like that. But to actually see them run what's a marathon? It's 25 miles thereabouts.
26, yeah.
Yeah, I think it is. Okay, so there's, say, 12 miles. A robot running 12 miles, not bad, you know? And
Not
as
bad
we
at all.
constantly say with AI, this is the worst robots will ever be. Moving on, some other stories. What have we got? A court in the US has ruled against Google in an ad case.
Yeah. Now, this is interesting because we've got 3 Google-related stories, and really they're one story. Now, Google is going through an antitrust case in the States at the moment, where it could potentially lead to the breakup of Google as we know it. Because as we know, Google has pretty much a monopoly in search. If you want to advertise something on Google, time was you were going to get Google ads before everything else. And when you have a monopoly on that, you've basically got a monopoly on ad space, which is one of the cases that is before the courts at the moment. Now, the court in a bizarre, I'm going to say bizarre because I'm used to American courts coming down on the side of big business and saying, do you know what? I mean, I'm not going to punish you for being successful, which tends to be the American line on these things. However, a court for it's a US district court, so I mean this can be appealed up to the federal level. So this has got a while to go yet. But it was found that Google was willfully acquiring and maintaining monopoly power. This is in its ad case, which you remember the idea was that, you know, any ads for something, if you're going through Google ads, you'd see it first, the little text ad on the right side. And if you were to see anything else, it would be way down the page, say below the fold or something like that, where it's not likely to be seen at all. So the judge ruled that, yeah, okay, this is a misuse of monopoly power. Pretty bad, for one. So let's park that. A rare pro-consumer decision in an American court, I'm going to say, perhaps unfairly. But anyway, so that's part one to what's happening with Google. You have got part two.
Well,
and it's
again,
Samsung.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of like having that dominant position. It's come out in an antitrust court case, which is going on at the moment, a separate case again, which has now come in with testimony from a Google VP of device partnerships. And he has said on the stand that since January of this year, Google have had a deal with Samsung so that they will carry, not carry, but pre-install Gemini, the AI, onto its phones. On all of its phones, all of its model, or with all of its capable phones, I should say, and that they are paying, and this is this is the quote right from the court, an enormous sum of money in a fixed monthly payment for the pleasure of doing so. Now, what is an enormous sum of money? There was testimony from another case previous which showed that $8 billion was being paid to Samsung to include search and play and Google Assistant and stuff like that on their phones. That's $8 billion. So we're talking billions that Google are paying to install Gemini onto your Samsung phone. Now, it's kind of almost back to Apple, because Apple do what they want with their platform and they will install whatever, and you have to use those things. With Samsung, it's not quite as walled garden, and with Gemini being pre-installed, it's kind of like I don't know.
You're not affected by it.
I'm not affected by it, and I don't know if I like it. But you see, the thing I think with the difference between Samsung phones is that if you don't want Gemini on the phone, I bet there's an option to not have it.
Yeah.
You know, whereas with an Apple phone, with the Apple Intelligence built in, I bet you there's no option to remove that. However, listen, this is not anything that Google has not done before. As I said, with the previous case, they were paying to have Search and Play and Google Assistant put in there. Apple have done all kinds of deals. In fact, Google have done deals with Apple so that Chrome would be Google would be the default search engine in Safari. So there's all this kind of stuff going on under the hood, like, just to be aware of it more than anything else. But with all of this that's going on in the States, it's kind of interesting because, as you say, there's a chance that Google, like Microsoft once upon a time, will be broken apart and have to operate various parts of their operation. One of them is that Chrome will be just taken out and kept separate from Alphabet. And I only say that because you think Chrome is kind of the premium browser at the moment, but it looks like they might have quite a big challenger coming onto the scene, courtesy of OpenAI.
Yeah, what's the percentage of users that just use Chrome at the moment? Is it 60-something%, or is it much
something
higher?
Around? I'll look it up. Tell me more about the OpenAI browser.
Yeah. So again, looking at this idea of 3 separate cases, but it's really one case. How much is Google going to be broken up by in the US, if at all? So far, just to go down through the list, we have, it has abused its position in the ad market. Mm-hmm. So, okay, that doesn't bode well for its advertising business. Okay, it's been paying Samsung big money to get Gemini onto Samsung phones. Okay, so that's potentially manipulation right there. But I mean, you said it. There's money exchanged to become default anything when it comes to devices. So maybe not the worst thing. But number 3, if Chrome is going to be split out from Google, and do you have a percentage there yet?
Yeah, StatCounter, March 2025 said that Chrome's worldwide market share is 66%.
Yeah, 66. Yeah, about what I thought. So two-thirds of everybody is using Chrome. Okay, so what do you do if Chrome is split out from Google? Well, OpenAI has had a look and said, do you know what? We would love a browser. We would love to make a browser, and we would turn it into what we're calling an AI first experience. Yeah. So instead of, I suppose, typing in your searches, you just chat with it the whole time. Yeah. and that would be it.
Yeah. Are you not doing that already more and more?
No, because I'm a curmudgeon.
Okay. All right. I find myself now, I'm using, I use a number of different AIs, but Perplexity is my AI for searching the web.
Okay.
And I just put the question into that and it gives me back the answer. And it has, kind of little symbols there saying what its sources are. So if I don't believe it, as I often don't with an AI, I can check that source. Yeah. And then some of the sources are a little bit suspect. Do you know what I mean? They're kind of like websites you've never heard of. Yeah. And even sound suspicious just by their names. But nevertheless, you can check the source. But I am using that AI for that. I rarely use Google now. Yeah.
Oh, I found something out during the week. Yeah. Apparently millions are being spent on superfluous interactions with ChatGPT. And do you know what it is? People are asking ChatGPT a question. Yeah. ChatGPT processes it and it costs whatever in carbon and money and all that kind of thing. Yeah. An infinitesimal amount, but it all adds up. Apparently millions are being wasted on people typing "thank you" at the end.
Do you know what? That's very strange. That is very strange because somebody was only saying that the other day that when they're using the AI, and that was the conversation. Do you say thank you at the end? And at least half the people who were there kind of, I do actually. It's a bit weird, isn't it? Like, and I find myself with the AI, I would like you to, or please, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm talking to a computer. Just tell it what to do. There's no need for niceties. That's very strange. It was like when somebody made me laugh when they were talking about electric buses, autonomous electric buses with no driver. And somebody asked the question, do I still have to say thank you when I'm getting off?
Of course you do.
So, same kind of a thing, I suppose.
That's a cultural thing.
Same kind of.
You're establishing your Irishness. It's like clapping when the plane lands.
I think it's a while since you've been on a plane now. It's only when the kids are on. There we go. Anyway, listen, that is all the news that is news for this week. Niall, thanks for keeping us up to date.
Share the knowledge and invite a friend to listen. Search Apple, Spotify, or YouTube for Tech Radio Ireland.
Managing physical and mental health is a challenge we all face every day. However, tech can ease that task and help us all benefit from a whole of health approach. To find out more about this, Niall Kitson spoke with Stephen Costello, who's CEO and co-founder of Spectrum.life, a digital partner who engages, empowers and transforms the lives of people.
Stephen, we've gotten very used to the idea of the quantified self, whether it's through wearing a Fitbit or a Whoop or, one of these devices that are fairly ubiquitous now. But you're also looking at extending that level of insight into slightly more ephemeral ways of minding yourself, like well-being. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing with that with Spectrum Life.
Yeah, thanks, Niall. So yeah, look, this is something that, I'm personally quite interested in. I'm someone that loves my own data, my own numbers of my own health and well-being. But I suppose from a Spectrum Life perspective and our technology, what we're not looking to do is just track your well-being. For us, it's about, guiding and the element of what we would call directional care. I think where fitness apps traditionally, and when I use them, do quite a lot is giving you the numbers, but not necessarily the direction. What I find is missing in a lot of the numbers for me is kind of the context, but also on top of that, the clinical intelligence. So what we're doing in our technology is, as you use the kind of quantified self kind of phraseology there, steps, sleep, calories, heart rate, all of this kind of stuff, which often a lot of people don't really understand what they mean, unless you're really, really focused on your own piece, right? You have to have a lot of health literacy, I think, to understand some of these pieces. And what we're trying to do is make that a lot more human centric. So what we would do is we would take, clinically qualified methodologies of tracking these items and package them up into journeys that are much more, consumer facing. We have something called our health score and mind score. And what that's aiming to do is take all of this data that we have within our platform and also the data that you provide us directly in terms of question sets and create a, much more personalized set of next steps. And, if I kind of look at people, and if I include myself in this, I think we're ahead of the mainstream kind of tech right now. Like what I'd be seeing myself doing quite a lot is if I do a workout using our own app or Apple Fitness, or I track something on, Whiting's have this kind of scales that you kind of go on and you can kind of track a lot of stuff on it. It's digital scales, and like screenshot them and put them into ChatGPT, right? That's what I personally do, right? And it gives you so much more context, right? And I think where some of the technology capability is, now ChatGPT is probably only getting that 60 to 70% accurate. And that's fine for me personally because my risks are low, et cetera. And I'm not using it at a company level. I'm just using it on my own health and well-being. But it's giving me so much more context. It's looking at my run that I just did or my spin workout and saying your resting heart rate 2 minutes post exercise is X, and this is where we rate you, right? And I think at the moment, we're moving towards that space from a technology perspective, but we can't yet take those risks. So the world we're operating in is much more regulated and requiring a lot more clinical intervention and clinical intelligence. And I think we're moving in the right direction, both in our technology and just generally. But I think actually some of those norms, and we work a lot with insurers, they have a very, very low risk tolerance on some of this type of stuff. So I think people and elements of the technology are further where we are within mainstream. And I think our job in Spectrum Life is to stay as far as ahead of that curve as possible, but within a zone of clinical efficacy, privacy regulations, but also, pure actual health tech, whether they be regulated, medical device, that type of stuff. But I'm really excited about this in terms of how we keep pushing that forward. But I think the quantified self is much more in the future about kind of, for us, directional care and context as opposed to just numbers.
So you mentioned there about working with insurance companies, and it's something we're starting to see in, sign up for your account with X provider and we'll give you a Fitbit, this sort of thing. Is this the sort of relationship that you can see between sort of health tech providers, but be it at, a corporate or a consumer level, and insurers in general, that, that flow of data will positively or perhaps negatively impact your premiums?
Yeah, so like Vitality would have been an insurer that would have led the way in the UK and more globally around that. And I think some of that's really, really interesting. I think how we would see it is we have kind of a funnel that we build our technology on, and we call it Engage, Empower, Transform. So Engage at the very top, if you think about it as a marketing funnel, how do you engage as many people with stuff like Health Score and Mind Score or a free Fitbit? How do you get them into the funnel? How do you get them engaged? You build enough data about the individual so that you can make a personalized recommendation. And that's the next stage for us, is what we then call a power. So how can you empower people with the information in order to what to do next with their health and well-being? And then if they do need it, transform. How can you deliver transformational care? So I think if there's a difference between the worried well, and I think some of those engagement tools that you mentioned there appeal to the worried well, and that can help insurers, right? That's a good thing for insurers, because if they get, a positive, healthy person on their claims book in the UK market where there isn't risk equalization, so they're, they're trying to attract those types of members, that can be a good thing. I think in the Irish market where there's risk equalization and everyone has the same level of risk from an insurance perspective, and you can't, rule people out based on risk, I think engaging that person at the top of the funnel means they're more likely to tackle a health and well-being issue that may be in the longer run cost the insurer more or cost the individual more, or, have an absenteeism from workplace or whatever. You engage people at the top of the funnel, it's going to be much more effective. So I think it depends on the context, and it depends about what's next after engagement. If it's just engagement for engagement's sake, and there isn't that empowerment and transform that follows, I think they're just gimmicks.
Yeah, there is a sense of, hey, check out my steps. Okay, that's fine. But what was the incline when you did those steps? That context does indeed matter. So tell us a little bit more about directional care. I mean, are you developing insights for people based on AI, or is there a human in the loop there? Do you have a team of consultants sort of talking about, the optimum ways for people to sort of manage themselves?
So everything that we do is in the frame of existing frameworks and clinical frameworks. Okay. So what we would have is a care navigator that knows the individuals engaging with our technology based on stuff like Health Score, Mind Score, the content, wearable integration. We would then understand what the member has access to from their insurer. So if they have access to mental health benefits or GP benefits, etc., and we're able to then ensure that member sees the right professional for them. And that is largely based on this presentation at this severity, this person could see a nurse as opposed to a GP. Or instead of a person seeing a GP first, a mental health professional second, they might just see the mental health professional first. And so that's probably the first layer of it. It's making sure you see the right person, as opposed to kind of the person saying, well, maybe I should see this or I should see that. Okay. So first of all, that's going to, healthcare is a very scarce resource. If people self-select in that means they're going to self-select inefficiently and waste potential resources. So it's the first layer. The second layer then is, we know this person should see a mental health professional. Which type of mental health professional should they see? If it's a low presentation, maybe they just need content, or maybe they need a coach, or maybe they need a counseling intervention, or all the way up to psychiatry. We have all those services in-house. And then it's actually which type of clinician. So should I see a counselor that's specialist in stress? Or if I'm a student and we look after many students in our service, should I see a counselor that specializes in dealing with young people and potentially change management? So that's the power of directional care. It's underpinned by clinical best practice, but it uses AI in order to, at times, make decisions that are underpinned by that clinical best practice.
That's interesting. So you effectively have a red line at which point you can be told, okay, now you should probably reach out and seek some help.
Exactly. And, in mental health presentations, the vast majority of people either just need a supportive conversation, a single session of counseling that doesn't even feel like counseling, where if a member was to wholly self-direct, they may just go out and say, hey, I'm going to see a counselor, go off and see 10 sessions of that counseling and then come back with an invoice or a receipt in order to claim for their insurer. And the thing is, there is a midpoint in terms of affordability for health insurance. Okay. And if it's done inefficiently, that means less people will be able to afford that insurance product. And for us, our job with insurers is to make sure that people see effective care, but it's efficiently delivered as well, which ultimately will mean more people can see that care.
And when you talk about working with insurers, I mean, some markets can be certainly quite crowded and others can be, not so much. How do you find the appetite is there when you go to an insurer and say, here's our offering? Do you get any pushback in the sense of, yeah, but what's our version of this offering as opposed to the competition? Is there sort of an element of openness there, or do people look for an element of customization specifically for their offering?
Yeah, it's a great question. And over COVID, a lot of health insurers and life insurers would have rushed really quickly to deploy health solutions digitally because face-to-face wasn't available and the public sector wasn't available. So that led to a huge technology stack of digital health solutions, but they were very disconnected. They were generally on separate apps. They required a different login. There wasn't connected care, so I couldn't, navigate in the way I explained that Care Navigator. So the part for us is that they have an existing piece of infrastructure, but it's very disconnected. So our big USP is connecting those journeys together into one SDK or piece of technology that sits inside the insurer's app. It uses all of the APIs for eligibility and single sign-on so that we understand what that member has access to. But we're also able to just do simple things like brand it and make it a very seamless experience for that insurance member. So it feels very authentically like the insurance app that you may claim through, that you may, add your dependents to, or whatever you use the insurance app to. This is just a new pathway in there that's about your digital health experiences. So yes, we do customizations, but it's within an existing framework of existing technology. And it's important for us that they don't all look the same, because if it's, as you say, a crowded market, we can't commoditize our product. It can't look the same across multiple insurers. So that's both UX and UI, but each insurer has their own unique take on the world, whether they're trying to target parents with kids as a product, or whether they're trying to target younger people, or whether they're trying to target corporates. So each insurer will have their place in the market that they do really well in. And that means we can add obviously different customizations to it in order to help them target that specific market segment.
Let's talk about corporates very quickly, because large organizations by their very nature have different tiers, they have different offerings, they have different levels of sort of benefits and protections for their staff. Smaller organizations will probably be a little bit more uniform. Large organizations might have somebody working a minimum wage level job on the shop floor compared to somebody that's working in the C-suite. So what has your experience been like in providing this device and service to larger organizations?
Yeah, so we would have about 3,000 direct corporate customers across the UK and Ireland. And largely what they're getting is a fairly unified product. So our product is largely for the workforce that wants a kind of very consistent product across all of their members. Okay. And typically, though, when we're looking after a book of insurance members, that's where they're able to say, using eligibility, that this population, maybe you only get access to those set of benefits, while this population maybe get access to a more expanded set of benefits. And our technology helps differentiate those two populations. But typically what we see in a corporate setting is our product is used as a equalizer, so that everyone gets the same level of benefit. It's only really when we get into an insurance context do we then start tiering between employees. That's just probably not a desire on our side. It's probably just the way the market works and the dynamics within the market.
And lastly, looking towards product development, I mean, you're working with different insurers out in industry, with corporates, an awful lot of stakeholders coming back to you with feedback. How do you find those discussions are going? I mean, everybody likes to hear they're doing particularly well, but have you managed to identify any particular pain points and thought, yeah, actually, we hadn't identified that as a problem ahead of time. Perhaps this is something we need to add to our service, or it's a UX issue. Have you come across much in the way of that sort of, I don't want to say pushback, but feedback?
Yeah, look, it's we're growing at 80% this year on year versus last year. So we do over 40 million revenue in 2025. And that'll be a high level of growth. And that is us both finding product market fit, but also us being very iterative to our customers. I think the challenge around that is, does your product look very different at the end than you intended it to be? And do you just do that solution for one customer and then you accumulate a ton of technical debt? So that's always what we're trying to protect against. I think our customers are always the biggest providers of our feedback. And sometimes we have to push back on that, and sometimes we have to accept that. I think our job is to stay, because we always have a build or buy question with our customers, particularly in the insurance context. Should they build this themselves or should they buy it from us? And I think the challenge of us is always staying just enough ahead of the curve. And I think the challenge with that is that you've got an upper end of the curve, which is AI adoption, and how far risk-averse insurers want to move into the adoption of AI, particularly in healthcare. And you've got what they can build and capability in-house. And we're kind of operating between above their capability and within what their risk tolerance of doing new things are. And I think that's what's given us that product market fit and continues to drive our growth, but we'll always be listening to our customers.
And that was Niall Kitson chatting with Stephen Costello, CEO and co-founder of Spectrum.life. And their website, as I'm sure you guessed, is Spectrum.life.
This is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
That is it for our show this week. Do check out some of the other stories that we have online for you this week, including...
Yes, we have Jason Walsh on why Europe should decouple from US tech. The music streaming service Deezer has a massive AI problem. And the shortlist for this year's Tech Excellence Awards has just been revealed.
Oh, the entire shortlist and all of those stories and more are online at techcentral.ie for you right now. We're back again next Friday with a brand new show online and on RT Radio 1 Extra. In the meantime, please do share our podcast with a friend. If they're into gadgets and tech and everything's going on here in Ireland, do ask them to look up Tech Radio Ireland on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever they get their podcasts. Until next time, from myself, Dusty, and from Niall Kitson, thanks for listening. Have a great weekend.
Remember, you can get the latest Irish tech news with hourly updates, daily newsletters, and more at our website, techcentral.ie. Share the knowledge and invite a friend to listen. Search Apple, Spotify, or YouTube for Tech Radio Ireland, or listen with RTE Radio 1 Extra. Tech Radio is produced by dustpod.io for techcentral.ie. From me, Artemis, live long and prosper.